And welcome everyone to another edition of the Spoiler Room. No, I am not trying out for a part on Howard the Duck 2. Uh, let's just say I was bit by the COVID bug. I am dancing the COVID a go-go, and I'm wearing the mask to help prevent it from getting to the family. So I'm quarantined, and we're doing all the precautions and such. So that's why I'm looking a little duckish tonight. But
I was thinking more like Freddy Krueger in Elm Street 4 when he was dressed up as the surgeon.
oh, there is that. Yeah. Wait, so you're saying my skin looks like burnt up Freddy? Okay, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine.
No.
I get it. That's okay.
I can't see your skin behind the mask.
Behind the Mask. Now there's a fun movie. No,
Oh, yes.
Kara will be joining us shortly, but you hear those dulcet tones of my co-host tonight. Yes, Mr. Ian Simmons is back with us, coming back for more. How you doing, sir?
Burn in hell, Mark. Sorry.
Okay.
I just kidding.
Okay.
I'm getting ready for the show.
I see that. You're getting ready for the burn in hell. Yeah. And yes, folks, we are kicking off our The Family That Slays Together month here. We are looking at horror films involving family members that don't have chainsaw in the title.
Must have been hard to find.
It wasn't exactly the easiest to put together. Let's put it that way. But tonight we are looking at 1991 Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. And it is just coincidence, though Mr. Simmons doesn't believe it, that we are doing this on the day of Mr. Wes Craven's birthday. We are recording this. So it just is a happy coinky dink. Or maybe it was subconscious. Maybe it was in my subconscious. I don't know. But well, while we wait for Kara, Ian, give the synopsis of The People Under the Stairs.
2 words. It's the Ghetto Goonies. Literally, it's
with a little more gore involved.
Not. I mean, I guess technically,
the Goonies didn't have cannibals, though.
I mean, it had skeletons and stuff, and I mean,
well, yeah, but they didn't have cannibals. This has cannibals. This says people eating people. Goonies, I don't.
Well, I mean, it's got people. Yeah, there was that one scene. Really, I mean, they had the other piece. Someone got bitten, and then Ving Rhames gets like flayed and filleted.
Yeah, and the guy's chewing on pieces of Ving. You know,
yeah,
I mean, sure. So we get cannibals in here. So I don't remember Chonk grabbing a piece of someone and chewing on it. So
right, but much like everything else in this movie, it's just a random tidbit that you kind of forget because it's not important. It kind of shows up and then it goes away, and then it's like it's also about a brother and sister who are posing as husband and wife, and the guy runs around in a gimp costume. And I watched this movie. It came out in 91. I probably rented it in 92. I was all excited because it's Wes Craven from Nightmare on Elm Street and all this other stuff. And I don't think I finished it.
Really?
Because watching it today, I was like, I have no memory of this movie, and not in the way of like I'm sure I've watched this before. I just don't remember it. I feel like I turned it off after 20 minutes, and unfortunately, because I'm coming on this show, I stuck out the entire hour and 45 minutes or whatever. That last hour, I kept pausing and coming back. It took me like 2 hours to finish the last hour because I could not. I had a hell of a time to holding on. Wow. Happy birthday, Wes. Happy birthday.
Wow. And see, I love this movie. I think this movie's awesome. I even got the soundtrack to it there.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
No, so this will be an interesting conversation. No, I dig it. What is it about it that you don't like? Is it just the how so many weird ideas just keep coming at you, or what is it about it that? Because I'm curious, what is it about it that that just turns you off to this film?
I don't know that we have that kind of time, but Kara is joining us, so maybe she could jump in and be the tiebreaker.
Nice way to to slip out of the hot seat there.
Yeah, you like how he just avoided answering my question altogether with oh hey look no it's Kara hey. Well, Kara, we were just talking about it. Ian hates this movie. I love this movie. So where do you stand for initial thoughts with The People Under the Stairs?
I like it. I think it's really good story writing. I'd say it's ahead of its time. How often do you have a Caucasian person writing about the struggles of African Americans? It has really good tension. There's a lot of surprises in there. It's very multifaceted. The characters are not one dimensional.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's entertaining.
Yeah, see, I found it very entertaining as well. I love how as it goes on, it gets more and more crazy.
It does. And I
You know,
jotted down some notes because I have some weird off the wall ideas about like why are they so nuts and why is the little girl being held hostage there?
ooh, I like that idea. But we're going to get back to Ian here of why what is it about it? At least a few of the points. No, because I'm curious. I want to know because usually people that I talk to, they enjoy this film. So I'm just not to put you on too much of a spot, Ian, but I'm just wondering what is it about the film that turns you off to it?
I mean, I disagree about the characters. I think they're all, pretty much one note. The social commentary, I think, is ham-handed to me. One of the problems is it does sound like a white guy trying to write, you know, compassionately about the social issues of the day, but I never got the impression watching this movie that Wes Craven had ever met a black person. I get the feeling that he watched a lot of them on television and movies and said, here's how they talk and what they care about. The tone is all over the place. I liked the two lead villains' performances in that they commit to them, but I hated the characters because I never got a sense of who they were. They were different people depending on the situation they were in. I never bought into them as people who had actually lived a life and gotten to the point where they had. And it's fine, but I mean, it's part Goonies, it's part Home Alone. It's not a horror movie. It's not in the least bit scary or tense because they keep reverting to this, I should say Wes Craven keeps reverting to these weird comedic beats as if he's trying to capture the zeitgeist of movies that had come out a couple of years before this. I don't know if it was studio interference or if this really was his vision, but I got vibes of My Soul to Take, the movie maybe that was his last movie in like 2010 or whatever, and that's not a good comparison in the least.
Wow. But all valid points. No, you are right. There is tonal shifts in it. I will give you that. I guess for me, I enjoy the lead, the little boy that
He was good, yeah.
Here. And I like the fact that we have you have a lead, a main character like this, the young boy who ends up being the kid that takes on this family. At one point he goes back, he gets out, he escapes, and he actually wants to go back. Which is a little bit of a surprise for what we're kind of used to seeing. Brandon Quinton Adams plays Fool, but I really liked him, and maybe that's why I enjoy this film so much because I latched onto this kid quite a bit, and you really want to see him be successful. So I think for me, Fool, he's at a tough spot. It is 91. We get the theme of gentrification in here, similar to what we had with Candyman, only it's crazy brother and sister. So you have those themes in there too that we've seen, but really, maybe it's just the young boy and why I very much connected with him that I thoroughly enjoy the film. Even with all of its warts.
Mark, did these landlords collect every rent from those 50 properties in cash over the decades. Is that what I'm meant to believe? They never went through a bank.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, because they're buying low income. They've bought low income housing. Not everyone has a checking account or whatnot. So I fully believed that they collected at least a lot of their rent via cash. Maybe not all of it, but a good chunk of it.
50 properties over the course of decades.
Yes.
And we're not just talking about, we're talking about low income housing, but to say not a lot of people had checking accounts, that sounds a little bit weird to me. And on top of that, even if they did collect the money in cash, they just literally shoved it into.
Give me a minute. Sorry.
No problem.
Mute button.
Sorry, go ahead.
They didn't like people under the stairs either. They shoved all that money into a room.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess for me with this film,
did they? Okay, they had 50 properties.
Yeah.
They collected all the money in cash, and all the money we're meant to believe that they collected, they put into a room, or a lot of it. Did Wes Craven understand how real estate and business works in terms of investment, to collect interest, to be able to reinvest in the properties? There's slumlords and everything, but you do have to keep up the buildings and pay for things. It's that one of my biggest gripes about this is it's a cartoonish view of a very serious issue. It is one-dimensional. It's trite. He's trying to talk about something, but he has nothing to say about it.
Oh, I can see that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess for me, I just looked at it as a weird horror film. I wasn't looking at it as any actual level outside of that. So when you get the vault of cash at some point, at that point in the film, we've got someone who's a kid who's been living in the walls. We've got a whole basement of mutant kids who've been tortured by this family. At this point, I guess for me, it's not so much suspension of disbelief. It's just that I did not pick this up as being in the real world. This is just a story, I guess.
And that's fine. But look at something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Massacre 2 specifically. There are there's commentary on capitalism in there, but it's baked into the story. And that wasn't a pun, but it is not
chilly in the county,
right? It is not integral enough to what the filmmaker is trying to say. It's decoration, right? This movie spends an inordinate amount of time talking about these issues, but not really saying anything about them. I agree. If you were to excise 20 minutes out of this movie and make it a solid, tight thriller about this kid trying to escape this house with these maniacs in it, it would have been a lot worse. But they're wasting time on this social commentary aspect. And I just imagined Wes Craven patting himself on the back and giggling and saying, I'm going to help out these black people by talking about how evil the white landlords are. I just I'd had enough.
Well, they were evil. They were evil landlords. So.
But they didn't have to be. That was, again, the whole selling point of this. And I went back and I watched the trailer because halfway through the movie, I'm like, this is a bunch of goofy shit. How is this movie marketed? And I went back and I watched the trailer, and it is more of a horror angle. It gets a little bit weird towards the middle, but the tagline on the poster and in the trailer was, there are some houses that, you dare not go into and everyone in the neighborhood's afraid of, all that other stuff.
Right.
Just make it about that and it's fine. It just has to be the crazy, spooky house. The kid goes in on a dare, or, they knock over a liquor store. That was kind of interesting. But this whole gold coin stuff. And then his grandpa's or his uncle, whoever's yeah, I've got a coin guy. He's going to come by tomorrow to check out these coins, and you're going to be set for life. I'm like, that guy does not know the guy who's going to set them up for life. I'm sorry. neighborhood Jim with his coin collecting shop is not going to be able to cut these people a check for $2 million.
I wondered about that. That did have me scratching my head a little bit on when he came up with that, when the kid brought in the gold coins, which is why they initially go there, and he says, "Oh, I got a coin guy." I'm like, "Really? Wow." But again, it did take me out of the film, but it was one of those, well, okay, sure. But I get what you're saying. The social commentary they put in there, coming off as not what's the exact word? Out of touch, to where he thinks he's writing something and being commentary, but it may not exactly land for everybody, or it doesn't seem nearly as potent as what he is intending it to be.
Yeah.
But he's trying. But
I mean, I don't know. To me, Wes Craven, the master of horror and all this other stuff. I know this is only 6 years after Elm Street, and he done other stuff. Trying's just not good enough. I mean, this just has first draft written all over it. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are things that I liked about this movie. Sean Whalen playing the character Roach.
yes,
His death scene, I thought, was pretty spectacular. He and Fool are kind of hiding out in a boiler, very Elm Street. And Roach had been shot, and he writes Alice's name in the dust on the wall, and then he dies, and that's really affecting. And then you've got another scene a half hour later where you've got a guy looking up a chimney and gets a brick dropped in his head.
Yeah, why not? That was cool. I like the brick drop.
Yeah, I liked it too, and I saw it with Joe Pesci the year before. Anyway, well. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I want you guys to celebrate the people under the stairs.
Yeah, that doesn't get anybody clicks. No, just kidding. Carl, what about you and the social commentary on this? Do you feel like it's a bit out of touch, that he's trying but maybe just missing the mark with it? Or
I'll agree that some things are a little off. But then again, I grew up in an entirely different culture. So, I mean, to me, it kind of read off as it's still effective because I was still able to relate to it. Yeah, I mean, like looking at it under the microscope, yeah, it's a little bit too lined up. Like, okay, there's this coin dealer and I know this guy, and it's like, there's no mention of, oh yeah, it took me months to find this guy. Like, I just got this guy in my pocket.
Well, the guy's been around, but the whole coin thing, I was wondering how they were going to work that out. And then you find the full vault of money, and so it's like, skip the coins. I'll just scoop up all that money that's sitting in that vault, which later on it does get distributed in a unique way.
It's not that unique. They did it with popcorn in Real Genius 5 years earlier.
Fine.
I said took a dump and money came out.
Yeah, there you go. So getting to the people, like I said, I liked Brandon Quinton Adams. The brother and sister, brother played by Everett McGill, and Wendy Robbie played the sister. I like their performances in here as the batshit crazy brother sister, and I like the fact that they made it brother sister, and that these kids were kidnapped. And we didn't work the whole incest angle in on this, as far as the kids being created from the incest.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I think it's still implied, though. It could just be an issue that, because we don't know any sort of malformation that may be in either of them. Maybe the woman just couldn't carry, and that's why they would snatch kids.
That could be. to where she couldn't carry them to term, and so that's why they were snatching kids, but they tried that way first. I could see that. But
Well, also, did they make reference to each other about being brother and sister? Because one thing that I thought
No.
about, what might have been an interesting angle, and maybe it's just in the subtext, is was it the grandfather who told them the whole story about them and how they're brother and sister? Could have been wrong. That could have just been another fabrication of the urban legend, because again, really, how would anybody know?
Yeah, played by Bill Cobbs, which was great to see him. I always like seeing Bill Cobbs.
I think it's implied because he's obviously on in years, so he's observed maybe at least 1 or 2 generations, and no fresh blood ever went in there.
Right, but again, I mean, how would he know necessarily? That's the thing. Families have secrets, especially powerful and well-connected families. I just think and again, I'm ascribing something to this film that I just wish I had seen more of, which is ideas. Like, you could play on the whole kind of the myth of the scary house on the street. Is there something sinister going on? Maybe not. Maybe it's something sinister that you hadn't considered before. Maybe it's different than, the urban legend. Maybe it's worse. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either on it. I mean, I like the creepy people. I like that they were brother and sister, and at least the kids weren't made from their joining, though he dresses up as a gimp, and she wears the pants of the two in the family for the most part. It seems like, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic between them. It I guess I could see what you're saying too, Ian, is that it's not quite explored or established. We find out later from Grandpa that their brother and sister, whether or not that's really relevant.
Well, that's the other thing, is it's not relevant. I mean, because if we didn't know that information, there would be nothing else in the story to suggest anything other than them being like a really messed up couple,
yeah,
right?
With their go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it's more a hint of their character, because they all come off as very well-to-do, they're wealthy, they come off as prim and proper when they're outside, but inside their house is grimy and disgusting, which is a reflection of them. So why not believe something else that's just as repulsive?
Yeah, I'm sure, but I just, again, what does it buy you? Like, what does it mean that they are brother and sister? Does it tie into beyond the family legend? Like, what does it have to do with the story that I'm watching unfold? Does it have anything to do with the kids that they're kidnapping? Like,
well, that was kind of my idea, because they had said that supposedly they're incest. So, because I got the weird idea that Alice was being groomed. They've taught her all of these behaviors and how to carry herself. There was that one scene with the brother character where you can tell he was looking to be inappropriate with her, and who's to say that's not how they carry on their bloodline, is they bring in non-related people and they multiply that way. So then she's been there so long as the fake daughter or whatever, people are going to believe, oh, well, that's incest with the next generation and whatever offspring.
Well, but you're opening up a good possibility too, which is, what if they weren't really brother and sister? They were similarly raised and groomed and made to believe that they, were, and this is just the way things are. There's nothing.
I mean, I did think that too, is they possibly are not related, but I don't know. There's like this rigidness that they have around each other, and I don't know if it's just the way that they were raised, or just the fact that maybe the idea of it's even too disgusting for them.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of sex in there. In fact, when the man, as he's referred to as like man and woman, I think those
man and woman, yeah,
right. When he's in the gimp outfit in the attic and Alice is pretending to be chained up, you see him walking towards her and he grabs his crotch. That was like the first indication of anybody in this movie having any kind of a sex drive, really. So yeah, but even that, I was like, okay, I mean, the movie is almost over. Nothing's going to happen there. So it's just one of those, again, a seed to plant, like, ooh, that's gross, kind of like the incest
Yeah.
thing. But it's
Um,
like I could just shout the word, the P word for someone who's, affectionate towards children in an appropriate way, just to get a reaction
Yeah.
from someone. That doesn't mean I'm actually saying or dramatizing anything. I'm just, it's like a Pavlovian response.
Well, even I had that idea. Like, is he a pedophile? Like, he's not even
See, I
legally
wasn't going to
supposed to be
say
of
it.
age.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Like,
was hard to say if he was or not, the way he was aggressive.
or I mean,
towards
it could just be
Alice.
the fact that this is the only other woman in the house, and she's coming of age. Hey, she's starting to look good.
Were they trying to groom a brother? Is that the problem? Because it seemed like all the people in the basement, the people under the stairs, were men.
I think so. That could have been I guess their next generation. So, but in theory, nobody's actually related. They just carry this weird name. But the the whole gimp outfit makes no sense. Like, if we're actually running a fine tooth comb through this and ripping it apart, it's like, what is up with that?
Well, especially because they have, especially the man has almost a 1950s, the Brill cream and kind of sweater vest aesthetic to him most of the time.
Well,
But
they
then
both do. They both have that 50s style to them. Their house is kind of older. She dresses and bakes for the cops who come by when the kid tries to get the cops over there for child abuse. Which, again, worst cops in the world. The way they investigate.
It does happen.
Oh yeah, I know. But it was one of those things where they covered them. They've been doing this for a while, so obviously it's not the first visit. But
Well,
she made. Oh, go ahead.
in theory, they've probably been groomed. Like, okay, and at some point in time, expect this. This is how we deal with it.
Right.
Hmm.
That's true. That's true. And I like your idea of a legacy to where man and woman or brother and sister, however you want to took it, maybe they weren't the originals of this. They were groomed at some point to, this is a legacy that's in this house, because especially with the grandpa talking about, the stories with that family, thinking of age-wise between man and woman and grandpa, and him talking about how this legend has been around for a while. Man and woman don't look that old, in all honesty.
No, they don't.
So it could be a legacy at the house, and that these people, these kids, they are grooming them. And well, Alice even mentions at one point that they were trying to get a brother, but they were always naughty, so they cut the naughty out, either cut their tongues off or
Yeah. I mean, that kind of also draws on crazy religious undertones. The whole cutting the bad parts out. Like, if it offends, cut it off.
yeah.
And not to keep bringing up
It's
other
some
movies that
weird
reminded
kind
me
of
but
conservative that they have.
yeah, but and not to keep bringing up movies that this reminded me of, but I mean, I didn't see like really anything original in this, which was really frustrating. It reminded me of a Xerox version of Carrie, Piper Laurie's performance. There's a lot of that in what Wendy Robbie kind of brings to certainly a more maniacal impulses, like when she's shoving Alice into the scalding hot bathtub, and I guess she's really red in the next scene when she's in the bedroom, and of course there's a picture of Ronald Reagan framed in the bedroom because it's political commentary, guys. Yeah, I don't know, it just seemed cheap.
Over exaggerated conservatives, Ian didn't like that.
No, I mean, it's fine. It's just that it's signifiers. Like there's 9,000 movies from the 1980s where there's a evil controlling authoritarian guy. He's got a framed picture of Ronald Reagan in his office, and I think when same thing happened with George Bush and George W. Bush. It's just an easy signifier that's meant for people to say, "Hey, I hate that guy, and these people remind me of them." And so it's like it's low hanging fruit. Which the thing is, Wes Craven is a smart filmmaker. He
Mhm.
was a very intuitive and sensitive, brilliant thinker and brilliant talker. I love like watching interviews with him. I couldn't believe that guy made this movie.
Mm. Just it seemed below him.
It seemed below an intern who was applying to get a job with an intern of his.
Wow.
That reminds me, actually, isn't today Wes Craven's birthday?
Yes, it
Yep,
is.
we did. Yeah, we mentioned that at the show before you hopped on. That it
Ah,
just is a coincidence that we're doing a show on Wes Craven's birthday. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I see where you're coming from with this. Is that if you're gonna put social commentary, do it right. If you're just gonna do a goofy horror film, just do a goofy horror film. Don't try to combine the two. So I can see your point with that.
I'm glad you said that because there's a scene early on where Leroy, played by Ving Rhames,
Yes.
um, I think played very well by Ving Rhames. I thought he was an interesting character, and it kind of bummed me out that he exited the picture in the first 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where they're in the house, and there's this dog, Prince, that gets unleashed on them, and there's a fight in the living room. They've established that there's an electrified door, like the front door,
Yes.
you can't touch or else you're going to get the shock of your life, and Fool does. There's a struggle with the dog, and they decide to, the dog latches onto Leroy. Fool convinces Leroy to drag the dog closer to the door. Fool grabs the door, grabs Leroy. I thought that he was going to have him swing the dog over onto the door to electrocute the dog, but no, they formed the most ridiculous looking, like goofy, Return of the Living Dead Michael Jackson parody electrocution. I'm like, okay, I've officially tuned out of this movie, and this might have been the point in 1992 when I had rented it that I turned it off and took the tape back to the store because I'm like, this is not good.
Oh, I thought I loved that bit where they grabbed the door handle and electrocuted.
There's a way
shot the
to
dog.
execute that scene where it works, but all they did was give this bizarre, like, comedy breakdance for a few seconds. I'm like, wow, this is just, I don't know if it's just, not executed well or if it's supposed to be funny because they're sort of breakdancing. But yeah, I was done.
I think it could be as simple as the scene was just dated. Certain parts of the film are, especially the way Ving Rhames' character dresses, where people were embracing their culture. And it's not really something I can comment on, but there was a lot of that too. You saw it on shows like Family Matters and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if even just like the humorous parts, I think that to a degree was done on purpose because there's so much tension in the film. You need that relief. And Wes Craven even did that with Hills Have Eyes, which is a very heavy film.
Well, there's a difference between tension, like relieving tension through moments of humor, and then having these way over the top characters who don't come across as. Oh, I'll go back to Texas Massacre. In the dinner scene where you've got everybody kind of freaking out and showing how crazy they are. There's no part of that where I'm sitting there looking at the cook, like cackling like a madman, thinking, oh, this guy's this wacky kind of cartoon character. I'm afraid for my life watching this, and I'm afraid for the people at that dinner table. Here, these, again, McGill and Robbie are doing the best they can as directed, but they're never scary or terrifying. I wouldn't want to be locked in a house with them, but as an audience member, I'm getting a completely different vibe from it.
They were, like you said, too cartoony for you.
Yes.
They were too exaggerated, which watching it again, especially with the lead, and we do have some blood or whatnot, but not a huge amount of gore, and the stuff you see is in shadows and such. Do you think Wes Craven was trying to make a kids horror movie?
Well, that's why I called this the Ghetto Goonies. Aside from the kind of the blatant plot cribbing. But it's an R-rated horror film, and granted, kids saw R-rated horror films in the theater all the time, so maybe that's what he was going for. But and I don't want to ever criticize an artist for trying something new or branching out. I just don't think this landed, because I think there's an expectation. I don't know how you market a kids horror film, especially back in 1991.
Right.
But it just, I went into this, because they marketed again, Wes Craven from the mind behind A Nightmare on Elm Street and all that stuff. So it sets an expectation that you're going to watch something, at least scary and at least smart. And this kind of failed on both counts. Now, if I'm 13 and no, because I was 13 when this movie came out, and I didn't give a shit about it. I turned it off.
And yeah, for me, the goofy villains, the overtop villains, the guy just showing up in his gimp hunting outfit, the parts with Prince, I thought were fairly scary, but then again, that was a scary dog. That was a big Rottweiler. But no, I thought there were some parts in here that were tension filled, like them running from the dog. I actually was scared more of the dog than I was of of man and woman. In all honesty.
You know what? Remake The People Under the Stairs and just have it with this kid trapped in the house with the crazy people have the house like locked up as a fortress because there's something in there the kid's trying to get.
Sure.
But turn it into this movie, but instead of People Under the Stairs, just fucking Cujo is in this house and the kid can't escape. I'm being serious, because I agree with you. I think that there are parts with the dog that are effective, especially the way the dog, bites it, with the bayonet through the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just think, again, is this a kid in a killer dog movie? Because the dog keeps showing up and getting thwarted and whatever, and punched in the face and all this. It kind of becomes comical.
I love the punch. Just out of like, boom. I'm like, oh, well, that's something you don't see every day.
Again, let's think about Cujo. Did anybody like comically punch the dog in the face in that movie? No, because it was a horror film.
They should have punched the dog in the face. So probably would have turned.
That dog was all mouth and weight.
Yeah,
That's
Danny
true.
Pintaro would have lost his arm if he'd tried punching that dog in the face and sort of Dee Wallace. Very true.
Very true. What do we think of the Alice character in this, played by AJ Langer? I thought her character was interesting, and how she handled things. Actually, I think Brandon kind of overshines her, but she's supposed to be more reserved. But Cara, what did you think of Alice?
I liked her. I don't know if it was intentionally some allusion to Alice in Wonderland, because as soon as Fool and everyone else enters the house, it's this kind of Rob Zombie-esque ascent into hell. Everything just gets really wild, and I don't see why it can't be seen as this crazy underworld. You've got mutants in the basement, you've got psychotic people upstairs, you're in a giant booby-trapped panic room.
And see, that's how I took it too, especially when you find out her name is Alice and you go down the rabbit hole, no pun intended here, because you go through the walls. But that's what I took it, is that the world inside the house was completely different than the world outside of the house. And once you entered in, he meets up with Alice. You don't get, Tweedledee and Tweedledum in here, but
well, that would be the cops.
That would be the cops. Yeah. Again, I don't think this is a perfect film by any means. I really enjoy it, but I will say this, and why I say these are the worst cops, even when they go out to investigate the child abuse that the Fool calls in just so that he could get back in the house. Even before that, the cops show up because Leroy and his buddy Spencer park their van in the driveway. And they go inside the house because, Leroy goes in the house because Spencer went in and he didn't come out. And so the van's there and these cops show up. And they're like, this van was involved in the robbery of a liquor store. Now we found out that Everett McGill's character owns a liquor store. So the folks, Leroy and Spencer probably knocked his liquor store over. But these cops aren't that far. They're like, well, we'll search the neighborhood. They go inside, and man is shooting up his house with a shotgun. And I'm like, okay, that you're going to hear for a block or two, or Ken. The house wasn't that soundproof. Where did the cops come? They don't hear that. No one else in the neighborhood hears the gunshots, because it's not just like one or two gunshots. He's blowing holes in the wall left and right, trying to shoot Roach.
Well, they kind of, and it doesn't work really, but they do sort of cover their tracks when the cops show up and Fool is trying to communicate with them.
Right.
No sound can get through those windows.
That's
so
true.
I have to imagine the entire house is somehow reinforced with this, although I don't know about the walls. The walls are very interesting in this house. At the very end of the movie, when a woman is being attacked, she is over by the living room window, and one of the ghouls comes out and grabs her ankle from underneath the living room window, which implies that it was coming from outside.
No, it came from a vent. There was a vent under the window. They crawled through the vents, so it grabbed her from a vent.
What I'm saying is this was a wall with a window on it.
Right, below the window was a vent, though. That's where the person came out of.
Right, but my point is, when this person crawled forward through the vent, the wall was not that thick.
Sure it was.
No. I've got a vent underneath the window in my living room. And in order to come out at that angle, you would have to be outside. You can't contort yourself into an L. First of all,
they could. These kids could, because they're mutants. So
they're not mutants. They're just regular people who've been kept in the basement for too long.
I don't know. They look kind of mutantish.
Well,
but if you're going with the health theme, I mean, usually you do get representation, and even in other films, of distorted looking people.
Yeah.
Again, none of this makes any sense because nobody bothered to establish the rules. It's meant for the audiences to there. Oh, well, maybe they're just, maybe they're mutants, or maybe they're demons, or maybe they can twist their bodies into pretzel shapes to fit through a vent. No, Mark, I'm not buying it.
I think
even if they could get in there, they can't. The angle that he was coming out of that vent, it was straight on to grab her leg. Unless his ass was sticking out the exact side of the house, it doesn't make any sense. It's a cool effect, but I went back and I rewound it. I'm like, wait a second, there's a window there. That doesn't check out. The one coming out of the cabinet, when she turns after she got grabbed, she goes and faces the opposite wall. Right. That makes sense. But no.
Okay. Fair enough. Cara, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, I think a lot of the issues is movies back then, they weren't all hung up on explaining things the way movies are now. And I think this trend began in the early 2000s. Like a good example would be going back to the origins of Leatherface and why this and why that. And my whole thought behind that is, who cares?
Right.
Or why is he wearing eyeshadow in the dinner scene? Like, is he trans? Is he gay? It's like, well, duh, because he was wearing a woman's face. That's why he has eyeshadow on.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, the thing is, they do explain who these people are, but then they don't. But then they do weird things with them later on that doesn't jive with the explanation we've been given of who they are.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. And maybe that's where the core of really one of the things that I can see that is might turn some people off to the film, because you are right. They're most horror, not most, but the solid horror films, and even Wes Craven when he did Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a set of rules. There are rules within the horror film. And you don't really, and I see where you're coming from on that, Ian, is that you don't really get a set of rules or the way things are consistently within this house And with these two people, it is not consistent as far as how behaviors are, what they do. We get that in the beginning, but as it goes on later on, it is just it does seem more and more like, hey, here's a really cool weird idea. He comes out in a Gibbs suit and starts hunting.
They've got these, Fool and Alice, when they're going through the house, they run into all these like crazy contraptions. Like,
well, yeah, from Roach. Roach put those in there. So
no, I'm talking about the sliding, the thing with all the spikes and things that come sliding out at them from the one room.
Oh, that yeah.
Yeah. It just got me to wondering, are these people that own the house, are they engineers? Why did they build these things? If they're keeping people downstairs in their house and they can build these contraptions out of metal and gears, and they've got this whole place wired with stairs that turn into slides, why not just build an actual prison with cages down in the basement to house these people instead of just letting them live in this like crawl space behind these wooden walls? That if there are that many of them down there, why aren't they breaking through the wood planks? They're all they're obviously insane. They do when the movie calls for them to come out towards the end, but
they weren't motivated before. They were motivated thanks to the influx of Fool coming in and motivating them because they had been oppressed so long by man and woman. And there was actually only one person who was living in the walls. That was Roach. Everybody else just lived in the half of the unfinished basement.
Right, but they didn't appear to be contained by anything except these, the wood slats of the wall. We never really get in behind there to see what was keeping them in there. They don't appear to be shackles or electrified cages like they had sort of on the front room door. But we do get a couple of scenes where people go onto the basement and we see them kind of like poking they're poking through the slats and they're kind of like slapping the outside. I mean, it's in the trailers, right? I'm like,
Right.
okay, what is keeping them in there? Because they're not mindless mutants. They are people who were abducted. They had lives, they had jobs, they were, electrical workers and students and people who just came to the house and they got abducted. They had their ears and eyes and tongue cut out or whatever. So they're not idiots.
Mm-hmm.
They would be motivated to leave, even if they'd gone insane and kind of animalistic. There's so much about this that doesn't make sense that me as a viewer, I'm like, why am I watching what I'm watching?
Well, their spirits were broken by man, woman, one at a time. So that's why they were down there. So that's why they didn't escape. Their spirits were broken by them.
My main curiosity is why keep them, especially if their dog eats human flesh.
Mm-hmm. It did make me wonder why they kept them down there.
Trophies.
Trophies, maybe. The fact that they still saw them as their kids.
Mark, I just want to go back to something. It takes a lot to break a human spirit. Shoving someone in a basement with a wood plank wall and
that was after they broke them. I mean, they cut off parts of their bodies and such. So I mean, they went through trying to get training beforehand. Alice talks about how they tried to train a brother beforehand, and that they all we know abuse was going on in the house. So
sure, but here's the other problem. You get a look at some of these people when they come out. Again, we don't know what the timeline was of these, but some of these are giant, hulking, creature-like things. I don't know if they were kept in there since they were children. I mean, a lot of them were adults because of what we learn in terms of the types of people that they were kidnapping in order to groom. The man and woman should have had some, more visible signs of a struggle, some reset broken bones or something, because again, I'm not buying it. You've got an adult who's brought into the house. They are groomed. It's not like a Leatherface situation where someone shows up at your front door and you just immediately take a sledgehammer to their face to turn them into meat. They're trying to keep them alive and sociable and all of that stuff. The story just completely falls apart once you start. When you ask like two questions, you just have to say, well, they might as well be mutants.
Kidnapping adults, they were kidnapping kids, and then
no, they were kidnapping adults, because Alice says some of them were like gas workers and people who are coming up to the house. That's where some of those people were in the basement.
I assumed they were killing those people.
Yeah, I assume that they killed most of those people, because they killed the one Spencer, who was posing as a gas worker. So,
but they don't. They don't really delineate, who they're doing with what, and if any of those people are they mixed in with the quote unquote failures or what?
Yeah, it's very true. I guess I wasn't looking for that explanation, but it does throw the questions out. You start questioning it rather than just taking what you're being presented, and you start thinking just below the layer.
I think back to, and this movie came out 20 years after, or 10 years after this one, but Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses, when the other Alice type character, which is one of the, my eyes rolled so far in the back of my head once I found out that AJ Langer's character's name was Alice, because everything else is like, I know exactly thematically and visually how this is going to play out, and I was not disappointed. But Rob Zombie's movie, once the Alice character in that goes into the tunnels underneath the Sid Haig's funhouse, whatever, she discovers a lot of people living under there that we are meant to believe were taken off the road and all of that stuff, and they have gone insane, but that's partially because they are trapped in this labyrinthine series of tunnels that's completely pitch black and there's no way out. That's not the case with this house.
Very true. Okay, very true. It's an argument. I can see your point with that it's not explained too well why they are still down there and why they haven't escaped. But again, I took it as their spirit was broken, but you're right. It does take a lot before you get them to see five lights. But anyway, sorry.
Well, if you're, because it takes physical and mental abuse to actually break a person, but it would take you roughly 2 to 3 years before you even get them to the cracking point, assuming they don't have a mental breakdown along the way.
See, and that's why I took that those down there were, they were from kids and not adults, but that were trapped in there. But then you're right when Alice says that some of them were adults or gas workers, or thieves. Well, they usually killed the thieves, which again, there was that moment. I love that moment. And that was very effective of how she made little dolls of the people that they killed, the thieves that come in, and she's got the one of Spencer. And then, Fool asks her, oh, well, I make one of these for every person, every thief that comes. And then she dumps that container and there's all those dolls in there. That's actually that was an effective moment. Like, oh, yeah. Wow. And I like that moment quite a bit. That gave you some threat from man and woman. But I can see too where the caricatures of man and woman and what they are might be more comical than scary. But I don't know. I don't know. McGill in that gimp suit was pretty scary. Personally.
I don't know. Even in the suit, he still managed to look kind of dorky.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And we got Infobomb, who made some comments here. He said he was surprised to see McGill mainstream and License to Kill, and that McGill is is not the typical sort one would cast as a father. And I think that's the point, though, is that,
he wasn't.
That's why he wasn't the dad. He doesn't look the part, so that just makes him that much more creepy.
Was he the priest or the preacher in Silver Bullet?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, because I was trying to think of where I'd seen him before.
Yeah, he was Reverend Lowe in Silver Bullet.
Okay.
Which he did right after Dune. So it's interesting to see the movies that he's done in that, and then he does People Under the Stairs, because he was in Twin Peaks as Big Ed Hurley, and then
along with Wendy Robbie, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So maybe this is a Twin Peaks horror film. That's what it meant to be.
Yeah, it's funny.
The restaurant.
Yeah, right?
Um,
Before the restaurant.
Wendy Robbie was in a movie called Relative that my friend
Mhm.
Michael Smith directed. It came out this year, and she's, it's obviously 30 years later from this, but she plays the matriarch of this, Illinois family, and she's like super sweet and super nice, and there's nothing sinister about her. So I've never watched Twin Peaks, so watching her in that movie and then coming to this, so like, wow, that's why I can't criticize the performances. I think they're both, pretty top notch as far as what they, are called upon to do.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think there's a lot of great performances in this film. In all honesty, for what it is, there's a lot, especially for a kid to carry this film, because he's the main character pretty much. Brandon Quinton Adams in here, the young boy, he does well. I mean, we follow him for the most part, and I thought he did well in here. But it's great to see all the other actors. Sean Whalen as Roach, he was great. I love the Roach character. Great performances in here with interesting with crazy characters. But you're right, the story, you start scratching just below the surface of the script, and you can see a lot of holes and head scratchers, I guess. But I took it as from its time period, maybe too. We got a lot of horror films kind of like this in the late, in that waning years of horror. Not so you coming out of that golden age, quote unquote, of the 80s horror. Things were taking a turn, and people were trying to throw in even more social commentary and such, and effort maybe. But
Well, and that's the thing, is I feel like, he gets points for trying, but then I think about the social commentary that he would do in the next two films. No, I never saw Vampire in Brooklyn. Yeah. But I'm thinking about, this is 91, so after this, he would have done New Nightmare,
right,
and then
which was
a few years later, Scream. So I feel like he can do social commentary when it's something that's right in his backyard, and he's
right.
intimately familiar with, like, the concept of pop culture and fame, and the impact that stories have on the youth. But when he tries to be like, I'm gonna talk about the evils of racism and gentrification, I'm like, no, this after school stuff doesn't cut it with the Wes Craven brand.
Yeah, I get it, and he did write the story of this. He said, according to trivia, he was inspired to write this after reading a real life news story about burglars breaking into a house. When authorities arrived, the burglars had disappeared, but they discovered locked doors and noises coming from behind them. Children had been locked up inside rooms by their parents, never allowed to go outside. And so that's what kind of spawned this story, apparently, for him. It was made on a budget of $6 million. And interesting enough, Hilary Swank auditioned for the role of Roach.
What?
Wow.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Because Roach was written, I guess, originally for male or female character. It doesn't matter which one.
Now I'm picturing that.
I would have thrown it off though, because they said all the boys were a problem.
Right. That's true. You would have had to change the script a bit.
Or not. I mean, she could have played a boy.
Boys don't cry.
Boys,
that was like 8 years later. That preparing for that. Yeah. No, that's very. Now I want to visit the alternate universe where I could watch Hilary Swank play Roach.
That would be fascinating. I think
because that was just around next Karate Kid territory.
Yeah.
I can picture it though, because I mean, she's never been like the female equivalent of Patrick Swayze or Brad Pitt. Like, she's not a pretty boy.
Right. And it would have been interesting to see her in in that role of Roach. There is a bit of history in here too, folks. The whole Desert Storm clip in here. There's a news bit in here dealing with Desert Storm because one of the kids is watching TV in the basement and a news report of Desert Storm's going on. So that took me back a bit. So yeah, I mean, love it or hate it is interesting. Excuse me, chapter into Mr. Wes Craven's filmography. Pardon my language. I hope no one's offended, but one of my favorite lines in this film was delivered by Ving Rhames, though. When he said, maybe the president of the United States will make me the secretary of pussy.
Yeah.
That
almost sounded like something Sam Jackson would say in a Pulp Fiction cut scene.
Right? Right?
Yeah, that was good.
So I guess we'll end the night with
and ironically there was a gimp suit in both films.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the thing. You're right. I had that thought. Ving Rhames is in this film. There's a gimp suit. He was in Pulp Fiction. There was a gimp.
Well, I actually thought about this when I saw Ving Rhames pop up on screen because there's the Masters of Horror, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah,
but they used to have the Master of Horror dinners out in LA where they would get a lot of the living horror legends together and just have these big, hours long dinners. And Tarantino and I think Wes Craven would go to those. I don't know if they went to them all the time, but I just wondered when exactly those happened. And if they ever talked about like, oh yeah, Ving Rhames was in my movie first. And then Tarantino was like, yeah, that's why I wanted to cast him in my movie because I love people under the stairs. Just imagine these conversations as I'm, watching this Home Alone horror movie.
And people had under the stairs had a gimp suit. That's a good idea. No.
Yeah.
That should be in his contract now that he only appears in films with gimp suits.
Ving Rhames?
Ving Rhames. He doesn't.
Oh,
he's not wearing one.
Yeah.
He's not wearing.
He needs
one.
to do it at least one more time before he retires.
There you go. He just
the Ving Rhames Gimp trilogy. I love it.
the Gimp trilogy. Oh yeah. So we've got the crazy family in here. Whether or not they are an actual brother or sister, we're not sure, but we go off of it, and that's why they are part of the family that slays together film month that we have here. So, as always, I thank my wonderful panel for talking about this interesting film. Sorry, Ian, that you didn't care for it too much. They can't always be winners. But
I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I got to talk about it because, like I said, I don't think I ever finished this when I was younger. So the circle is now complete.
And you do make some really solid points, but at the same time, I still enjoy this film quite a bit. Like I said, I got the vinyl, the music I thought was fantastic in here. Graham Revell's score, it definitely is of its period, but it's very fitting of it. And it's definitely an interesting Wes Craven film. When you look at his other bodies of work, it's like, maybe he was just making this to have fun, which Robbie, she did have the most fun, she said, on this set when she filmed it. So I guess that you could tell she was having fun with this character. So now, as always, is the point where we give our crew members the license to shill. So please, Kara, let folks know where you can be found and where your stuff can be found.
I'm primarily on YouTube. That would be Horror Retrospective. And I still have tons of old reviews to go through. There's definitely no shortage of things to find. Actually, People Under the Stairs was one of my first reviews when I first started out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Very cool. So yes, check out the Horror Retrospective. And Ian, Mr. Simmons, please shill away.
I'm Ian Simmons, as you can see in the little box there. I
there
orient
you go.
myself.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got it.
I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com, and the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. Do reviews and haven't done interviews in a while, but roundtables and things. But yeah, this week doing a roundtable of DC's League of Super Pets, which should be fun. And there's also a new version of Don't Read the Comments coming out, I believe, tomorrow. So by the time this goes up, the re-recording or playback, whatever, you'll be able to watch that. So yeah, check it out. And yeah, that's my spiel.
Awesome. Yes, check out that as well at kickseat.com. And folks, the Sawdust City Fright Fest that is coming out second weekend in October in beautiful Oshkosh, Wisconsin, is announcing its selections for the festival. Look for it soon at sawdustcityfrightfest.com, where we will have a list of all the wonderful films that we will be playing during the 2-day fest. Friday night, we will be showing a film called Rise from Spoiler Room gentleman who's been in here many times, Mr. Cole Meredith. His film Rise has finally seen the light of day. It has been a very long journey for him, but that film is being shown in various places, and it will show at the Sawdust City Fright Fest Friday night. Kind of kicks things off, and then Saturday we will have a block of shorts and a couple of films that we will be showing as well, feature films that will be showing. So it should be a lot of fun. So if you're in the Wisconsin area, check it out. And then the weekend after that, if you're in Milwaukee, check out the Twisted Dreams Film Festival, Horror Film Festival. Great group there. They're showing Shakespeare Shitstorm. It is a Milwaukee premiere from Troma. Uncle Lloyd will be there. Brink Stevens will be there. They've got a band playing, I believe, and well as a burlesque show, and they'll be showing Wisconsin horror films. And then Sunday they're showing Nosferatu, but they've got a live performer doing the music for Nosferatu. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. So a lot of that's all in October, the horror season. Thank you so much for listening to us get through this episode. I hope I didn't sound too rough. Thank you so much, one and all. And next week we will be looking at the Nicolas Cage film Mom and Dad, which should definitely be an interesting discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to iTunes and all that for our podcast. We appreciate Mr. Infobomb and everybody who tuned into the live show. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.